The 2019 Adelaide Podcast Festival was proudly sponsored by Omni Studio, Zoom, and presented by the Ozcast Network. Please welcome Psychosynthesis.
Well, hi everyone. It's great to be here and be a part of the festival.
Hello.
What an amazing festival Ozcast is to host this year.
Yes.
So my name, for those that don't know, I'm Salome, and this is my mother, Janine.
Nice to see you all.
Yes, indeed. I'm a qualified social worker working with people who want to be foster carers and provide a loving home to South Australia's most vulnerable children. And my mum, Janine Burrells, is a very experienced psychotherapist and has her own counselling business where she is very skilled and works with a wide variety of clients. My mum tells me that the therapist is as important as the therapeutic process itself. Sigmund Freud, a very famous Austrian psychiatrist who developed psychoanalysis, shared that psychotherapy work can be compared to a home. He stated that a therapist should be interested in all floors of the home, including the attic, the sunroof, and the balcony, from which a person can reflect their connection with the sun and the stars. Psychosynthesis invites a client and a therapist to build a staircase in a personality house so that the individual can benefit from all levels of their strengths and personality. Psychosynthesis is seen as a positive and optimistic therapy. There's awareness that darkness and suffering exist, but it's often followed by positive things. This podcast is intended to be light this evening. However, if you do feel emotional or upset, please take care of yourself and leave the room if you need to. You're also welcome to speak with Mum or I after the segment. So, Mum.
What an introduction.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I've talked a little bit about how suffering can bring positive things. So can you tell us a little bit about your work and how you've seen people develop empathy as a result of loss or suffering?
Yeah. So what happens is that people associate coming to me or to someone with mental health issues as only negative, or you've got stress. But often through our suffering, we get a depth of understanding of what life is really about. So often after a crisis, and a crisis can be something positive like having a baby or moving house, people report afterwards, I have a lot more understanding now when people say, gee, it's hard to wake up in the morning after a night restless time with a baby. So in this type of philosophy that psychosynthesis promotes, there's an understanding that, I guess, traveling through the house that you just mentioned with the cellar and the ground floor where we do TikTok things, we don't even have to think about it. It can be very therapeutic when you're in a crisis situation. But also, by traveling through that house on the staircase or the elevator, whatever it is, we discover maybe higher aspects of ourselves after we've sat for a while in suffering and pain. And one of the things that's really wonderful when I work with people, and I work with people over a long period of time sometimes, is that when they come out of that identification with their problems and their issues, that they have a real excitement about, gee, I now understand a lot more about other people's suffering, or I have an appreciation about the complexities of life. So an example of that is maybe I can give an example.
Great, please do.
One of my clients has lost his son in an accident at home, and when he now reads the paper or he hears a story of other people having a loss in the family, he makes a great effort in either sending a card or he rings those people up and makes himself available. And in some traditions, actually in Europe now, there's a lot of awareness that some of these people who have experienced grief or suffering in any format are perhaps best equipped to deal with people. And I think they call them experience experts. Okay. So that is a real kind of, through his own suffering, this client now has the room to perhaps give to some other people advice or suggestions or financial help that can benefit these people who are going through that same issue.
Great. So what have you observed as a follow-on from empathy that people find?
Well, I think that one of the things that is often said, maybe I can talk a little bit about that, is that the younger generation is a generation of entitlement, and there's no appreciation of things. I actually see quite the opposite, that the whole kind of notion of I've gone through something and therefore I want to share with other people is not all that unfamiliar across the whole strata of society. Actually, everyone is wanting to be helpful. So that idea that's very central in psychosynthesis, that innately we're all good. Something happens to us, we have a trauma experience or we have an abuse experience, and we've just had the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse in institutions. That sets people up in a very wrong way, but essentially we're all good people, and that's an optimistic thought to keep, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I suppose it's fascinating how suffering can certainly lead to a deeper sense of care for others, and it's certainly something that I've seen in my work as well. So you've touched on kindness, and that's something that we're hoping to focus on in this segment. So, Mum, tell us, how do you define kindness?
Kindness is actually a value, an important value that people aspire to practice. It can be a very conscious decision that they want to be more kind, and they pay the parking ticket for the person who's behind them, or they decide to do another random act of kindness. We've had that whole period of people practicing that. But kindness is something that is sometimes described as that instead of operating from the head, we start to operate more from the heart. And instead of being focused on ourselves, we start to focus on others. So that is a definition that out of the kindness of our heart, this is how we say that too, that our language is very really revealing there. Out of the kindness of our heart, we say we sometimes do something that is in nature altruistic. It's not of our own interest, it's not going to benefit us, but it is actually for the betterment of others.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can do a little practice with that, can we?
Sure.
You all in for it?
Should we do an activity?
Yes. So one of the things that what I've already said, is that kindness is an activity that is generated from the heart. So what I invite you to do is a very simple and probably one of the oldest actions in therapy. There's an older therapist in the United States called Peter Levine, who talks about it. If that's the only thing you do in therapy with someone, that's probably the most sufficient one. Where I'll ask you to do that, put your left hand on where you think your heart is. And maybe take a deep breath and focus your eyes on one particular spot in front of you. And feel the weight of your hand and the warmth of your hand. The warmth of your hand is often associated with the innate healing power that we have. Just tune into that energy of your heart. And maybe from that place you can send a loving thought to someone that you know may be struggling or suffering. And I'm already noticing the change of energy in the room. So take a nice belly breath and come back to the room. Maybe you have something to share. How did that go for you, Sam?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I think it's surprising how quickly you feel the warmth of your heart or your body, and that immediately sort of you tune into, I don't know if it's a deeper sense of self or, yeah, it feels good.
Great. It's a very practical exercise. You have to be a bit careful how you debrief. I had recently a gentleman that I said to, are you willing to do a little experiment? Put your hand on your heart. And he did. And he seemed to go into a deep state. And I said, okay, now, do you want to share with me what happened? What did you feel in there? Me wallet, he said.
Great activity. Does anyone in the room want to share what they felt when they did the little activity?
Just warm.
Warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Thank you. Good. Right. So I suppose the next question leading on from that is that you work with a very diverse group of clients and families, young people, older people. And you touched on this a little bit, but what sort of things, I suppose, do you notice with some of the younger clients that you work with?
Well, some of the younger clients that I've worked with already, I mentioned that before, often have had a life of perhaps great privilege. They've grown up with an electric blanket and a television in their room. They haven't really had a great deal of suffering materially. And so that often, I think, translates to maybe the older generation, is that they are a group of people that are coming from entitlement and demand and have no appreciation of some of the struggling that maybe the other generation might have gone through. But I also think that sometimes the issues that younger people present are really much more complex. How to live with social media, how to integrate all the information that comes to them, and how there's a universality in a lot of our problems, really, when you think about that. Whether you're young or old, you experience grief or you experience abuse or injustice. I think that's the key theme, is that somehow we all seem to have deep within our psyche an expectation that life should be just, that life should be fair. And anytime that seems to be challenged, we have a very strong reaction, and whether that's more with emotion, which I think is perhaps, how they sometimes say that when people get older they become more mild. I think younger people seem to have a much more forceful kind of reaction to injustice or unfairness or suffering.
Why is that happening to me? Those sorts of
Yeah, exactly. And so the expression of that can be quite damaging, and to integrate those very strong impulses and strong emotions is a big struggle for younger people. And often they feel incredible shame about that and don't speak up. I think when people become older, there has already become, it's more common for people to be perhaps more honest about what they really feel, and particularly the men that I see. I work a lot with men, actually. So that's one of the things that I notice, is that in older men they seem to be more forthcoming with perhaps suffering or struggles that they have.
Thank you, Mum. Well, it seems that we're coming to the end. It's gone very quickly. So just want to thank everyone for your time and your participation. Thank you, Mum. You've done well. Hopefully you take away something of the notion of kindness from Mum's talk, and I guess the huge difference that you can make in someone's life by trying to be kind, whether that's opening a door for someone or saying thank you or giving a smile. To some people, kindness is known as the lubricant of community living, and in my work we often say that it takes a village to raise a child. Without kindness and support, people find it exceptionally hard to raise children. If you liked listening to Mum, you can find more of her podcast episodes on her website, which is janineburelds.com, and she's also on Facebook. So thank you also to Ozcast and the sponsors for having us this evening. It's been a great opportunity.
For more on the Adelaide Podcast Festival, hit up adelaidepodcastfestival.com.au.